One, okay, if you have no idea who the person is, and you can't tell anything about them, my lord and my lady is satisfactory. It does not, it should, anyone who gets offended by that's a jerk.
Yeah.
And screw them, don't worry about it. If you know they are a lady or a lord, and you have talked to them, lord, lady, no big deal. Some people, and in this era, we are dealing with people who have decided to come up with pronouns. If they have the pronouns and they tell them to you, that's your decision. You want to respect those pronouns? Fine. Because a lot of people want neutral pronouns, like gentle. Okay, that's their business. That's your business, whether you accept it. Okay, moving up the line, or coming down the line, obviously, the crown is going to be your majesty. Pretty straightforward. Now, some crowns want to, all titles can have alternate titles. So somebody can be a king. Our current king styles himself as a sultan. Someone did the research to discover they're about equal, so they let him use it. After you get done with the crown, you come down to, we have no princes and princesses right now, and we have no principalities. There are two types of princes and princesses. One is the crown prince, and that means they're going to be the next king. But there are also things called principalities. And a principality is just a group. A kingdom so big, it has more than one principality. That is a little different. That's your highness. If someone's won the crown tournament, it is your royal highness. And you can discern by that. Then you get dukes, your grace. And dukes have different names. Herzog, which is German. Yes?
How can you tell this by the hats or what they wear?
Okay, I was gonna go back up to.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
Sorry.
Good question though. Dukes is your grace. Everybody else that has a hat is excellency. Now, for hats, how can you tell? First level, barons and baronesses. It's an old joke, but barons and baronesses have balls. Somewhere on their cornet is going to be a representation of balls. Some are very easy to spot. Here's a proviso. Artists get involved. And they get all artsy about the whole thing. So sometimes it's very difficult. But somewhere in there is supposed to be a representation of balls. I have one at home that just has these points for balls. And that means that person is a baron or baroness. Next up would be the count, or earl, or anyone else. They have what's called crenellations. Crenellations are like, take a look at a rook in a chess piece. Like that. That's a count. Or countess, or whatever alternate title that person may have decided. Earl, something like that. But the crenellations should tell you. Coming up from that, dukes and duchesses are stylized like strawberry leaves. Somewhere on their coronet will be a representation of a strawberry leaf. And then you get to crowns. And crowns are artistic, and basically they're going to be big and bold and, although, once again, the problem becomes one if somebody's a baron and they have somebody make a coronet for them. By the way, only kings and queens wear crowns. Everybody else wears a coronet. It ain't a big deal. But that's technically it. So sometimes you can get confused, which is why you have to fall back on, your excellency, or our king. So, okay, your head. And most people are going to be polite enough. Here's an example of the way life works. You ever go into a library and see a research librarian sitting over there by themselves? You know what that research librarian is thinking almost the entire shift? God, I wish somebody would ask me a question.
It's true.
It's absolutely true. I discovered that when I was in high school. And I realized people go apeshit. And 90% of the people in the SCA are walking around waiting for you to go, where did you get that? You know how I made friends with His Grace, Duke Albert? First time I ever met him, I asked him a question. 2 months later, he was done answering it. And we were pretty good buddies. And each and every one, Shayna does some really cool artwork. And isn't it cool when someone says, how did you do that?
I'm not sure anybody's asked me that yet, but when they do.
When they do, but you're getting better.
But I have found a lot of people are very excited when I do ask questions.
Yeah, because man,
Like
what
Monica.
what a thing, you've been studying on 15th century Russian history. It isn't exactly the kind of thing people walk up to you and go, "Hey, man, what do you know about the Rus of Kiev in the 9th century?" And when someone does, you love them. So don't be afraid to just ask the question, such as, "I don't recognize your crown. Could you tell me?" That's the easiest way, but that's basically it. Balls, cornets, balls, crenellations, strawberry leaves. We'll get you by. Most important thing you're probably ever going to have to deal with is the first time you're called into court. What do you do?
Be polite.
Panic.
Don't hurt your family.
Be polite. Now, once again,
Don't be nauseating.
from my point of view, first thing you do is go to the farthest place at the back and walk down the center aisle. Even if you're sitting in the front seat, go to the side, walk around, come down the center aisle. Second, should someone escort you? That's your decision. When I was a Baron of Alberon, I told my guards, "You will not escort ladies in front of me unless they request it." Because they would all look like dorks fighting, because for some reason it gets stuck in people's heads that a lady has to be escorted. Why? I'm about ready to give her a reward for being a superhuman being. So why should she need an escort? If there is someone there who is significant to her and she wants that escort, fine. That's her decision. It's his or her moment. So they come down the aisle slowly, approaching their majesties. When you're at a certain space, judge usually it's considered 10 feet, but that's going to be site circumstantial. Some sites you ain't going to have 10 feet. You're going to have 3 or 4 at best. But when you get to that edge, you stop and you acknowledge the crown. Now, if the crown have any guests on either side, you also give them. Oh,
Often, when you're wearing 14th century clothing for men, the tunic stops here. You may or may not have tights on. Do not bend over like that.
yeah, it doesn't have.
Take your legs. One goes in back, and you lower that knee and nod to the crown.
Just a nice little difference. Now, once you have acknowledged all the crown and the crown's guests, usually there's going to be a pillow, and that pillow has been put at the feet of the crown. This is going to get dicey because the pillow is supposed to be for you to put your knees on, but most crowns don't think about it until the time comes and it's too close and you feel uncomfortable because it looks like you're about ready to get intimate.
Yeah. How
But
do you choose which one? Because there's usually one from the queen and usually one
right in the
from
middle.
king. Okay.
You could also sit there and go, like, sort of give a gesture as to which one you'd like to have people, have you kneel on.
Well, that's the crown's decision.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's the crown's decision.
I was just curious.
No,
if there
right in the
was
middle. I mean, where else would you go?
One thing I have to tell them for the past 15 years, if I have to go down, you're going to have to help me get up.
Well, no, now the crown is also not. Most of them are not.
I'm not live anymore.
Most of them are not sadists, and they don't recognize because there are some people. Myself, I can't go to my knees. Now I'll say something to the effect of, "My apologies, Your Majesties, but I am infirm and I cannot go to my knees," and they'll say that's fine. But if you can, you go to your knees on the pillow, and you're looking at them. Here's the thing: some kingdoms do this, others do not. It's an individual choice. Some people make a thing out of removing all their weaponry before they go before the crown.
Especially in the middle.
Knives, swords, sort of like that. I don't do it. It's not requested of you in this kingdom. Some people do it because they feel. I personally think that it's insulting to the crown. I mean, he's got guards, and what's he going to do? Call someone forward that he's afraid of?
Have you seen an owl walk up there when he doesn't know why he's being called? Nobody's going to take anything from you.
Yeah, I carry, my king insists I carry weapons, so I don't take them off. But some people do. That's an individual choice. I prefer not to do it. You bet, and you go to your knees. Now, then they're going to sit there and bullshit for a while. It's going to be stupid. I mean, they're going to talk and they're going to say this person. Sometimes they'll indicate they want you to rise. and it's a little triangle, and they're telling everybody, and then they'll bring out the scroll, and no matter what it is on that scroll, everybody goes ooh ah ooh ah.
Usually because they have word.
Well, most people can't see it.
Just like that.
When I was Baron of Alberon, I did something that they all thought was horrible, but I thought it was great. I had a person who took the scroll and walked out to where they were at the edge of the crowd so people could see it. I know what it says. We all know what it says. So we don't have to have it.
But when it's illuminated,
I want them to see it.
somebody does script, somebody else usually does the picture around
We've had art shows because some people showed up with some scrolls that were just, and that just couldn't possibly be carried. But anyway, they'll say nice things about you, and then they'll give you the scroll, and no one ever says, now shoo, but you got to have enough social graces to understand when they're done with you. And and when they're done, you take it step back, facing them. Once again, acknowledge the crown, acknowledge their guests, and then back away until you're at a place where you're out of their presence. Like I said, some sites, that's 10 feet. When we used to go up here to Beulah,
That's real small and tight.
Beulah wasn't no 10 feet, man. 2 steps and you're pretty much on somebody's lap. So you have to just take that and adjust. But you're not supposed to turn your back on the crown while you're within their sphere. Boom. That's pretty straightforward as far as being presented. Other things with the crown. Even if the thrones are empty and you cross in front of them, you should acknowledge with a little bow of the head the crown.
Usually within 6 or 8 feet.
Yeah, I mean,
And not too far back.
it's not like you're at the back of the room and they're over there. But if you're crossing in front of them, and never, ever, ever sit in them. Except for, once again, I want everything to be remembered, except for an emergency. If for some reason you were having a medical emergency, no one is going to, and needed to sit right that moment, no one's going to give you hell about that.
Yeah, through the sheet.
I usually have to ask if they would forgive me for not kneeling because it's real ugly watching.
Oh, yeah, I
my
have-
knees
I
are
can't do it.
damaged and purple by that.
I cannot do it. I cannot go to my knees, so I will request. And then, they say fine, that sort of thing. So, once again, it's just going to be who you're dealing with. Are you dealing with a jerk or not? Most people are fairly polite about it.
Like you were having
So, bow and back off. Yeah. As far as, like, speaking to the crown, or anybody you don't know that looks like they're important at an event, walk up to the front of them at a certain distance, stop, and once again, if they've done this at all, they're going to realize that you're there for some reason, and they're going to eventually acknowledge you. Once again, unless you're a dick. Or if you happen to know somebody that's standing next to them well enough to initiate the conversation, go to that person and say, yes,
Do you attempt to speak to them or do you speak to the retinue?
depends. If they have a retinue and you know someone in the retinue, find someone in the retinue and say, would it be possible to speak to the crown for a moment?
Okay, so if you know, do that.
Yeah, always. If you're gonna have suck-ups around, put them to work. That's what they're there for. They're there to control that sort of thing. They're there to control. Because once again, man, if you're at a big event, the crown has got a lot on its plate for time. Some of it's stupid, but it has to be done. And it's nothing against you. It's just they've been invited to 6 different places that if they don't go to, the people will be offended. They've got 4 different meetings to attend, which are, just critical to the universe. So they have very little time, and they have to use it wisely. So if they're standing there with a retinue, stand where the retinue can see you. If you don't know anyone on the retinue, and what do you want? Okay, just a moment, and then they can get it in for you. Always use the people who have the regalia for what they're supposed to be there for. Use them. We are here for your tools.
I attended an event with Lord Harold horrible forgetting his last name. He passed away. But one of the outlandish duchesses wandered by and he said, "My lady," because he didn't recognize crowns, he didn't know the differences. It was his second event, and she went sniff and walked out. That was a big joke.
She's a jerk.
It's a good reason that I'm glad I forgot her name. So now you can't say it with anybody.
But tell me this: in any aspect of your lives, do you not run into people like that?
Oh, yeah.
God, yeah, daily.
Deal with them the same way. Don't deal with them.
Oh,
And they can't mess up. Here's something else. We have a club based on the Middle Ages. If we don't have counts and dukes and knights and that sort of thing, do we have the Middle Ages?
No.
We're props. Honestly, you look through all of our documentation, everything we do, you will find that as a knight, I have no more authority than anyone else. Now, what I do have is implied authority. And that's because obviously I spend a lot of time fighting, so I know a lot about it. But that does not mean I can't walk up to you and say, now I have a little bit better knowledge of game, so I know who to talk to. I have a little more reputation, but that's it. I can't impose my will on you in any way. And in your camp, no one can. It's your
although
camp.
you may give courtesy to a noble wandering crew.
Yeah, you can give the
Like
cook,
king or queen.
but they can't order you to do jack. We are a prop. Without it, what are we?
Nothing.
A
Friends
costume.
hanging out.
Yeah, we're a costume club.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
I know that knights are sir. Do squires have a title?
Nope.
Okay.
Squires are really unofficial.
So lord,
They
lady.
might be lords, they might not be lords.
Whatever their type, there is. Once again, you go through all of our documentation, and you will find nothing that says anything about squires or students.
Original
I wasn't sure, so I thought I'd
They
ask.
are written now.
Are they?
I've seen
Yeah.
it from the east and from
Okay.
the
Now, once again, I want to be clear. Different kingdoms have slightly different things.
Yep.
Like in the kingdom of North Shield, squires wear silver chains, and they're allowed.
and silver spurs.
And in this kingdom, no. Squires are not allowed to wear any sort of chain or spurs. They can wear a red belt. But it's not written down anywhere. And students, apparently green for laurel or pelican. Laurel. And the blue, I think, for pelican.
No, blue is Master of Arms, Man at Arms.
I thought yellow was
Yellow
pelican.
is Pelican.
Yellow is
It's totally unofficial. So
Yeah, but that's just what.
by tradition. It's by tradition. What time is it?
About 11:30.
Okay,
on my phone.
we're gonna hit a point to wrap up because there's one thing I want to delve into really quick. There's a lot of stuff that's unofficial, and there's something I think is very important to bring up. Households. Who's heard of them? Okay, once again, you dig through all the documentation in the SCA, and you will not find a single word about households.
Nope.
They are whatever you want them to be. In the beginning, I blissfully believe they came about because me and Bob are buddies, and we want to go camping. We realized one day that if we join together, we can do a really cool camp. And so we go, and pretty soon someone says, "Well, what are you?" "Well, we're House Haagen-Dazs." And
I'm excited about that one.
just to give ourselves a presence. Now, over the years, certain households, God, Rolling Thunder just went nuts. There are Rolling Thunder groups all across America. There's Florida Thunder, there's Texas Thunder. They all came out of Albron in the original Rolling
You
Thunder.
don't want to camp next to them.
They got
Unless
famous.
you like drums because they have. You're doing it for this hour and a half. And he's out there drumming. I don't care if it's 2 to 3:30 in the morning. He's out there doing
They
it.
used to be real big about that. Some, their young ones would boast by drumming till morning, and they got really organized. I mean, when you're in Thunder, they have levels. They have these things. They're little silver pins, and they're drumsticks. And if they give you one of those drumsticks, what it means is you can take anyone else's drumsticks away, or tell them to stop drumming. In their camp, only in their camp.
Yeah.
In other words, somebody comes in who can't carry a beat, and this guy can walk over and say, "Stop!
You're done.
You really bumming my vibe." They had ceremonies. They had a household. They got so big they had a civil war. They really did. It was nasty. A lot of people who were friends split up. A lot of people, they became deadly enemies. I was Baron of Alberon when the Civil War happened, and out of it came 2 new households. There was a household called Crimson Company. Lying bastards. They're great guys, but they always swore to God they weren't modeled after the Gore novels. Anyone here ever read a Gore novel?
Then why did the ladies wear neck?
I know. It was horse shit, but they tried to say it, and they were into their women. If your girlfriend showed up and went to an event with Crimson Company, she had to wear a bunny skin bikini, and it had to be made from the skin of one bunny. Some lady, they put up with it, and they had slaves. In fact, they're responsible for the anti-slave law in the Kingdom of the Outlands, because an embarrassing incident happened, and they said no, you can no longer use the term slave, because they did it. The women did it, and they had a great time. They had some wild ass parties. They were. What's really funny? One of their main members was a nuclear scientist. He had his PhD and spent half the year in Russia dealing with nuclear power plants. So these weren't stupid people. They just wanted to play that game. The polite thing they did is they found themselves sites within the site. Their campsite was always off. The old site, man, you had to go up a mountain to get to it because they had loud, raucous parties. And they invented an alcoholic beverage called Roga, which anyone who's ever gone to college probably had their own version of Roga. It's gone by so many different names: artillery punch, passion punch, and that stuff would get you pounded. And they would scream and yell and be wild men, which is really funny because during the week, most of them were, but that's how they wanted to play. And that's something else about households. You find people that are alike, and you get together because you're friends.
But you're still all in the SCA.
You're all in the SCA. And a lot of times they get so big they start to recruit. There's a one up north that everyone assumes has been stamped by God, called Golden Star or North Star or something like that. And these guys, they're snooty and they're this, they're that. But the North has always been that way. The North was made for Gold Star, and it really started with one guy, and next thing you know, there was 10. Pretty soon, it's the cool kids, and pretty soon, if you want to be this, and the legend goes, if you want to be a knight, you have to be Gold Star, that sort of shit. It's not true. It's harder. So, any questions at this point?
So officially, households are just groups of friends within the organization that have banded together. They aren't an official SCA.
They are nothing.
Okay.
But you can have your own heraldry.
Yeah, they can be.
You can have a blazon that denotes that you are House XYZ. Got it.
A lot of them will do badges. A lot of them will do, but it has no
bearing on the game.
And if they want to give titles within the household, they can give titles within the household, but they can't use those titles outside the household.
Because it doesn't mean anything outside the household.
Yep, they have no authority whatsoever outside the household. They have only the authority that the members of the household want to give them. And that's it. Like I said, it's just, it makes it easier. Anyone here thinking about going to Grand Outlandish?
When, where?
Grand Outlandish takes place in New Mexico Memorial Day weekend. It ends on the Monday. It is, at one time, it was the premier event in the Outlands. At one time, if you wanted to get knighted or anything else, you better go to Grand Outlandish, because it was the gathering of the tribes. It was the Battlemore before there was a Battlemore. Literally, for some reason, it just caught on. It's the oldest event west of the Mississippi. Oldest, and you got to jug with the pandemic years. It will be held again. It's going to be there. I found out the site fee is $20.
Yeah.
Now, it's rough. It's rough because it's an unimproved site. There's no water and there's no electricity. And you ain't near nothing. Well, you are near, but it's a 2-hour drive.
Don't forget anything.
Don't forget anything.
What town is it near?
The closest town that has a, not Moriarty, there's a little place, Edgewood. In fact, there's a supermarket just before you start into the. It's almost all paved road till you get real close. Spotty cell phone service. So if you go and you depend upon GPS on your phone, write it down.
Get him there.
You do have to pre-register for it, but that's the kind of thing. If you wanted to go, I would suggest hook up with Sir Tigger as the Baron and say, can we go and be like in your camp? Because that's something else baronies are good for. The barony becomes sort of a de facto household. So he can go, and as Baron, he can say, I've got X people coming with me, I need this much space. And they're gonna go, okay, because you're a Baron, and he'll get that space, and then everybody camps together. It can be very, very formal. Battlemore, first couple of years, the barony went up, and they even had a communal kitchen. Those things have to be, communalism equals, here comes a problem. Because somebody's gonna get pissed at somebody, but you just have to be aware of it. So, you can help each other, and one person becomes like, I used to call them native guides. You've never been there before? Well, go with a native guide who's been there. They do have activities for all levels. You don't have to be a fighter. They have classes, displays, there's parties, there'll be concerts, bardic circles, and it goes all the way from the wild of the pirates, and they are pretty wild. I mean, well, in fact, they're also another group that's very good about, they live a pretty wild life, and they do some pretty wild things, but they also make sure they have a gate guard, and no one who's not 21 goes into their camp during the party. I mean, they're serious about that. And you have fun things. People have these elaborate gates, and there'll be gate guards, and they ask you stupid questions sometimes, or make you do stupid little tasks. Can you dance on one foot for, to come in? And then all the way down to very mellow camps where people are just sitting around chatting and drinking and having a good time. But it's probably, if you go to Grand Outlandish, you will see what an SCA event is supposed to be. Everything else flows out of something like that.
Joe has a flyer who tried to go to Pennsylvania. He got there a week early. He wore his red belt because I told him to. I didn't know they had changed their rules. Anybody with a red belt was considered a drudge and had to set up camp. So after the first afternoon, he left and toured Pennsylvania and came back to the event when it was open, which was the second or third week. First week is set up. They store semi-trailers on the property there. These two are for the Middle Kingdom. You open them up and they have Hindu village fronts set up and the tent behind them.
Once again, because they've been in the same place for all these years, every year somebody comes and adds a little bit to, like the Florence Villa. It's an incredible thing. And a lot of these people are very creative, and they're theater students, so they can build some really amazing stuff that's theater style. And they add something every year. And after 5-6 years, you got this elaborate thing. And you can see when households go through, those portable garages that they sell? I can tell you exactly when they became popular. Because one day you've got an SCA event and suddenly there they are. So some household buys one and puts it up, and it becomes the common area of the kitchen. And then everybody sets their tents up around it because it takes a household. Those things aren't easy to put up. They're easy, but they're time consuming. I had a squire that learned that lesson. He used to make Bedouin tents, and he made one that was so large it had 4 components, 4 areas, each one about 20 feet long. So this thing's like 80 feet long. Floor was covered in carpet. He spent an entire day and a half putting it up and a day and a half taking it down. And he finally came to the conclusion that this sucks, and he stopped doing it. But it can be anything from, one guy's got a pop-up, you pop it up, it just makes it a lot easier to go when everybody looks out for everybody's back. Yes.
There's a lot of us that are new that we don't have all the really cool, expensive
Don't need it.
tents. So when you're camping with a group of people who do,
Hide in the back.
just kind of scooch.
Yeah, well, don't put yourself front and center. You know, don't get the center stage. Find a place in the rear. And if you're camping with people that have that kind of stuff and they've allowed you to camp, they're going to be smart enough to say, "Oh, here, camp over here." And then you can also do things like hang tapestries. Go over to whatever the normal or Pier 1 is today, or hit Amazon. I just found some things on Amazon that are great. In fact, those tablecloths you came up with. Great.
Those are cool.
You know, and the thing about that is, you take a table, you put the tablecloth, right? Now you can take all your mundane coolers and stick them under and you don't have to mess with them. You don't have to do tape on the cooler because
You are nowhere near water you can use.
oh no. Tigger! Is Tigger over there?
No, he's at his car. I'll go get him.
Every time. Are you new on the job? Okay, she'll get it.
Yeah, she has the permit in her car.
Yeah, she's getting the permit right now.
Anyway,
Snubberies is the other thing.
snubberies.
Those are sheets with beautiful artwork, medieval style,
Can be.
that you put up to hide your mundane world.
They can be. They can be basically anything.
Yeah.
For a while there, bamboo. You know those bamboo
Sunscreens.
They were popular for a while, and everybody engineers their own. It gives you a little privacy if you want it.
It can be right along the lines of making your own tapestries too.
Yeah, if you want. And they get some really. There was a household that did one that blew me away. It was a reproduction of a Bayeux tapestry. It was incredible. But they can also just be a sheet.
Yeah.
You don't have to have artwork on them. Some of them is just to control and differentiate, especially some of the, like Estrella, where it's just packed in like the pour. But that can go all the way from somebody who shows up and just has a pup tent.
That is.
Everybody's welcome.
I need to stop recording.
What's that?
I need to stop recording.
Thank you.